Hello and welcome to Learn Fast with HK. Today we are going to understand the forward rate agreements with examples. A forward rate agreement, or an FRA for short form, is an over-the-counter forward contract in which the underlying is an interest rate. Well, since it is an over-the-counter contract, it is not tradable through stock exchanges. It can only be traded through a dealer network. Moreover, as its underlying is the interest rate, the value of the forward contract or an FRA contract will depend on the fluctuation of the interest rates in future. There are two parties involved in it. The first one is the fixed rate receiver. This party wants to receive a fixed interest rate and pay floating interest rate. As this party is paying floating, it would always want the floating rates to go down, or in other words, we can say that it is short on floating rates. On the other hand, there is a second party, which is a floating rate receiver. Over here, the party would want the floating rates to go up as it is the recipient of the floating rates and payer of the fixed rates. We can also say that this party is long on floating rates. Whenever you are long on something, you would always want that asset to rise. And on the other hand, whenever you are short on something, you would always want that asset to decline in value. So if you think that the floating rates would go up in future, you would always take a long position. So in total, we have two parties with different expectations. One is long the floating rate and other is short the floating rate. The floating rates that I'm talking about over here are LIBOR or Euribor, which is the London Interbank Offered Rate, and Euro Interbank Offered Rate. These rates keep on changing continuously and we don't know what they are going to be in future, and there lies all the uncertainty. So let's go ahead and understand some of the features of an FRA contract. The first point to understand is that the FRA price is the fixed interest rate that is decided in the beginning of the contract. It could be 5% or 10% depending on the scenario. So if you are long on a contract, you would receive LIBOR and pay this fixed rate, which could be 5 or 10%. The second point is that no cash is exchanged in the beginning of the contract. So you can enter the contract without investing anything. And this is done so that we don't have any arbitrage opportunities arising. The third point says that the contract is based on a notional value like $100,000 or 1 million or any other value. Now, this is not the amount that needs to be exchanged, as this is just the notional amount. However, the interest rates that we have been talking about are based on this notional amount, which is ultimately exchanged between the two parties. Last but not the least, the contracts are identified in the form of X multiplied by Y, where X and Y are months. And this multiplication symbol is we read it as by. So we would rather say X by Y. Let's understand this by taking an example. I have two FRA agreements here. The first one is a 1/4 agreement, which means that the contract will expire in 1 month, and at expiration, the underlying will mature in 3 months, which is the difference between 1 and 4. So if we go by the timeline, let's suppose that we are standing at time 0, which is today, and the contract is initiated at the fixed rate of 7%. Now, we would have to wait for 1 month to pass before we can start calculating the profit and loss positions. Now, let's say that 1 month has passed and we are standing at this point. At this point, we will see what is the 90-day LIBOR at this time. Why 90-day LIBOR is because the contract has already expired and there are 3 months left from now for the underlying to mature. So it has to be a 3-month or a 90-day LIBOR. We see the tenure of the underlying from the point when the contract expires and not from the point 0. Now let's say that the 3-month LIBOR today is 8%. Earlier we established that the fixed rate was 7%. So clearly the LIBOR is greater than the fixed rate, and going by this, the long position would gain and short position would lose. The net gain for the long position is 1% of the notional value, which will be paid by short to long. The next one we have is a 3/6 FRA. This contract will expire in 3 months, and at expiration, the profit and loss calculations will be based on 3-month LIBOR, which is again the difference between 6 and 3. Now let's look at a complete example for more clarity. Imagine that there is a US company which expects to make a bank interest payment after 30 days based on 90-day LIBOR. So it's a 1/4 contract situation, which is after 1 month based on 3-month LIBOR. This is a very common situation, and there are many companies which take loan on floating rate. Now, this could be concerning for the company because if the 90-day LIBOR goes up, the interest payments would also go up. So the financial advisor of the company advises it to hedge it by entering into a 1/4 FRA, an instrument which will expire in 30 days and is based on 90-day LIBOR. There is a contract available with the dealer, and the fixed rate of the contract is 0.50% based on the notional value of $10 million. It means that after 1 month, the company will receive 90-day LIBOR and pay 0.50% in return, which is fixed. Technically, we will use 90-day LIBOR received from this contract to make the loan payment, which would hedge the risk and convert its loan into a fixed rate of 0.50%. This way, the company is converting its floating rate loan into a fixed rate loan and wouldn't be worried about the interest rates going up and down. We have decided to divide the calculation into 2 parts. In the first part, we will calculate the profit and loss. So let's do it. The profit for the floating rate receiver is equal to $10 million, which is the notional value of the contract, multiplied by the difference between the floating rate and the fixed rate, which is the net profit that the floating rate position has earned. Now you must be wondering why we have divided the entire thing by 4. Well, that's because the floating rates and the fixed rates that we have been talking about are the annual rates, and we are making this calculation based on 90 days rather than 1 year. So it's necessary to divide it by 4. After solving the entire equation, we reach to a profit of 1250, which is the profit earned by floating rate receiver on this contract. Now this amount is supposed to be received after 90 days from today, as this is the interest earned on a 90-day LIBOR. This is where this amount will be received at the maturity of the underlying. And this is how these contracts are designed. But in the real world, it doesn't work like that. Instead of waiting for 90 days, we discount the profit earned to the present value on some interest rate. The interest rate is already given in the question, which is 0.45% in this case. So in the second step, we will just discount it by 0.45%, but 0.45% is again an annual figure. So it would be wrong if we discount it by that. So again, we have to divide it by 4. Over here, we have just multiplied it by 0.25, which is also the same thing. After this, we arrive at the actual profit earned on this contract, which is 1249 in this case. To summarize, if the company hadn't entered into this contract to hedge itself, it would have paid $1249 extra as an interest payment since LIBOR increased. But by entering into a contract, it earned $1249, which can be used to nullify the increase in the interest payment of the loan. Had the LIBOR gone down, it would have made a loss on the FRA agreement, but at the same time, it would have also made lesser payment for its interest on the loan, which again would have been a good situation for the company. I think that's about it. I hope you've got the clarity about this concept. And apart from this, we also take classes for CFA level 1 and 2. For any inquiries, please contact us at the given contact details. And for any feedback or inquiries, please leave a comment in the video.